And it not only is our right to share this knowledge with the rest of the world, but it really is our responsibility. After all, it would be so selfish of us if we had been shown how to make a beautiful country, and then we had a lot of people in the world that were very unhappy, and we didn't share it with them. We didn't try to make them like us so they could also be happy like we are. And the idea behind this is what's sometimes called American exceptionalism. It's the argument that we make the rules, but we don't have to follow them. Other countries need to follow them because without rules, they will behave badly. Without rules, we will not behave badly because we only want what's good for everybody. Other countries in the world have very narrow, self-serving interests, not like the United States, which not only doesn't seek anything good for itself, but actually sacrifices itself for the good of other countries. And we even do this when they're so ungrateful to us, and they tell us they don't want our help, and they want us out. That isn't even enough for us. We still want to help them. We still want to show them what's really right. So all of this together provides a background that makes change in foreign policy very difficult. Now, I think in general, during the presidential election campaign that produced the Obama presidency, many voters got carried away with the idea that change you can believe in meant profound alteration in the whole way we approach the problems that our country faces. Well, I think after the first year of the Obama administration, we've realized that that's not true, that there is not going to be a profound change in our approach to most great national problems. We are not going to see radically new or innovative ideas, and I think that's especially true in foreign policy. In this imperial culture of Washington, the highest virtue, if you're in the foreign policy business, is toughness. You've got to be tough. You don't want to be a wimp. You don't want to back down. It comes from the Western movie paradigm. This town is not big enough for both of us, so let's have a shootout. A person who feels that international problems can be resolved or at least diminished through negotiation, through compromise, through discussion, a person who draws back instinctively from the idea of war and conflict, is often marginalized simply because of those views from the foreign policy establishment, because you're thought of as a weakling. All negotiations are viewed as essentially a version of Munich. We are surrendering to tyranny. And because of this, we've embarked on a confrontational policy, which has turned much of the world into, if not anti-American, at least very skeptical of America position. We are seen as a country that instinctively reaches for a pistol, just like a guy in a Western movie. After all, think back. Did you ever see a Western movie where, in the end, John Wayne and the Indians are sitting around a table and saying, you know, you want to live here, we want to live here, we should be able to work out something where we could all be happy. Let's see if we can work out a deal that would be good for everybody. There's never been a John Wayne movie that ended that way. And anyone who tries to propose that kind of an approach to international affairs is thought of as somehow un-American. So with that as a background, let's take a look at the Middle East. We start out from this premise that whatever policies we've been using in our effort to stabilize that region have not worked. Now, what would be a set of alternatives? So let me offer one. Over these last decades, our closest allies in the Middle East have been Israel and Saudi Arabia. Those have been the twin pillars of American power in the Middle East. They have been our faithful clients, allies, and they are countries who have essentially helped us guide our policy in the Middle East. In Washington, the assumption has always, in recent decades, been Whatever Saudi Arabia wants, Saudi Arabia gets. Whatever Israel wants, Israel gets. Now, it's traditionally thought that the basis for American friendship with Saudi Arabia is oil, and the basis for American friendship with Israel is shared values. There's a certain truth to this, but that's not the whole story. The larger truth is that Israel and Saudi Arabia were vital partners of the United States during the Cold War. Don't forget that for decades, the United States saw everything that happened in the world through the prism of the Cold War. We never believed that there was anything going on domestically inside a country that was important or challenging to the structures that ruled the world that did not have to do with the Cold War. So the Cold War was everything to us. Now, we had many allies in the Cold War. We had our military allies in NATO, and we had friends all over the world. They supported our positions at the United Nations. They provided us military help when we needed it. But those countries only helped in ways that were legal, that were public, that were known. The United States was also involved during the Cold War in a number of operations that were conducted out of public view. In fact, you could make an argument that a great deal of what the Cold War was made of was operations that were clandestine and covert and secret. It wasn't just the US side, but also the Soviet side that was embarked in this long, secret war of which we're only now becoming fully aware. The two countries in the world that were most willing to help the United States in these more dubious ventures, these less legal or less public ventures, were Israel and Saudi Arabia. When the United States wanted to send arms to Guatemala, for example, during the late 1970s and early 1980s, we couldn't do that because the US Congress had forbidden military aid to Guatemala because we knew that the military aid was being used to massacre people. Nonetheless, President Reagan was desperate to send arms to the Guatemalan army. How did he do that? Because it was illegal to do it. We got the Israelis to do it. The United States wanted to be militarily helpful to South Africa during the Reagan administration, but we couldn't do that because of US law. So how did we do it? Israel became the ally of South Africa and provided considerable military aid to South Africa. Israel was also involved in supporting our allies in El Salvador. Israel supported the Contras. Israel has been active in many parts of the world where we wanted to be active, but we couldn't because these were too brutally repressive regimes. We didn't want to be publicly associated with them, or in some cases we were legally forbidden by our own Congress from aiding them. Israel helped us. Israel was, as one member of the Israeli parliament called it, the dirty work contractor of the United States during the Cold War. If there was one other country that helped us this much, it was Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia presented the United States with a truly fantastic and absolutely irresistible offer. Essentially, their approach to the United States is, we have huge amounts of money and you can have as much of it as you want. Their slogan could be, my checkbook is your checkbook. You couldn't ask for a better ally than that, particularly when this ally is willing to spend this money any way that we feel is necessary. So, for example, when the United States needed to sponsor the Contra Army in Nicaragua at a time when we couldn't do that, we had some arms coming in from Israel. $35 million a year was coming from Saudi Arabia. When the United States put together a group of Libyan exiles that wanted to go in and fight Gaddafi, we couldn't organize them. We didn't have the money because that was not a legal activity for the US government. Saudi Arabia paid for it for us. When we launched our war in Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia paid half the bill. They paid something like $5 billion to underwrite our war in Afghanistan. Saudi Arabia and Israel were vital partners of the United States during the Cold War.